Joe Davis here. Welcome to Southern New Hampshire University Justice 224 Legal Research. Today we are going to talk about the discussion question, the discussion board for week number 2 or module number 2. This is the specific question for discussion 2-1. There are many circumstances in which researchers would be more likely to look to a secondary source of law as they seek an answer to a legal question. In your initial post, identify a specific secondary source for locating legal information. Then discuss why secondary sources might be a good place for criminal justice practitioners to start when conducting legal research. In response to your peers, indicate whether you agree or disagree with your peers' responses on the importance or usefulness of beginning legal research with secondary sources. To support your position, include discussion of why or why not. And so what we need to think about here is that you're going to read the text as it says here, pages 22 through 27. There's also material on this in the overview. There's material on this in the mini lecture I did on the overview for this week. So there is a lot of information there for you. Among the things that were discussed is the difference between primary and secondary sources. Documents that interpret or discuss the primary sources. That's what a secondary source is. So a primary source, the example I've been using, is Victor shot Dan. That's an attempted murder, an attempt homicide. Okay? And so that we would find in the United States Code. And it would tell us specifically what the law says, the elements of the crime, the corpus delicti. That may not help you. This example's pretty simple and cut and dried, but on the more complex issues, it may not help you. So if you go to legal journals, newspaper articles, online posts, you may get a better understanding of what attempted homicide is, or perhaps the legal issue of was this a federal crime or not? So you may want to read about soldiers being killed, those kinds of things. Some are very detailed and very legal, but others are very broad. They're a general overview of the topic. They're easy reading, if you will. And that's why it can be a great starting spot for you, is that if you don't really understand or you're unsure, you think you got it, in a secondary source, you're reading much more interesting stuff about law or about a case than just reading the law, which can be, as one student wrote to me, I don't understand the mumbo jumbo. Then go to the secondary source and read the story, if you will. A logical place to start when you don't know anything about the topic. Now the shooting is relatively simple, but let's, for example, say you pick a legal issue that is the police arrive at Victor's house. His mother answers the door. The police say, "Is Victor here?" And she says, "No, Victor is not here." Two things are about to occur, or have occurred, or about to occur. Number one, she has now lied to the police, and she is harboring a fugitive, or she's interfering with an investigation, those kinds of things. Number two, the police are going to push her out of the way and go ahead and search. You may not know anything about that. I mean, you can tell something's wrong. Well, if you were to go to secondary sources and look up harboring or aiding and abetting or lying to the police, then you'd find some of these examples, these cases, you'd read them and you'd get the knowledge. The second part of that legal issue would be they push her out of the way and they go ahead and go upstairs, they find Victor and they search and they arrest Victor and they seize evidence. Okay, is that a lawful search? Do they need a search warrant? And you go, heck, Joe, I don't know. Well, it's complicated. There is no law that you can read that says under that specific circumstance. So you have to read the secondary sources. And depending on how much reading you do, you may decide, gosh, they were in hot pursuit. They were right behind Victor. It could be that they thought there were exigent circumstances, that Victor's life was in danger or something like that. But those are the kinds of things you would want to read about, understand, and then begin to look for. your specific thing. So they can explain a basic concept, and then the key to it all is they always include a citation, a cite, to the primary source. So going back to the more simple example of Victor shot Dan, then it will have a link for you that if you've looked up the federal, it'll take you to the United States Code, and you can find this section. Okay, so you'll learn how things are generally done and how in other states. The assumption is for this paper and this class is that you use your own state, because of course the case study doesn't give you a particular state. I would say if you're having trouble or something, use New Hampshire or use California. I know there's just a ton of resources available out there. Okay, where do you find these? Secondary sources, you find them at the Cornell Law Library. The link to that, you find it in FindLaw. You can find it using the Shapiro Library, but you're looking for websites and newspapers and books and legal texts. For the most part, more general sources online. So you may just want to read about a case. You're not going to cite it as fact. You just want to understand. Here are some popular secondary sources. You know, usability and the helpfulness vary widely. I would say start with NOLO. That's the publisher of the book. American Jurisprudence and American Law Review, I have a typo there, Law Reports, excuse me, are very well respected. There is a summary of law, a summary of California, summary of New Hampshire, a summary of Nevada, so that those are out there for law and procedure. You can even go to like the IRS website, which for what we're doing isn't appropriate, I don't think, but it's not but it is a secondary source. And finally, go to the Shapiro Library, contact the librarian, ask, look for the Justice Studies resource guides, finding legal information, and of course you can always contact me. I hope that helps you. Oh wait, I think I have one more slide. Yes, take a look at the discussion rubric. Make sure you answer the rubric. There are a couple of things that I want to mention about discussions. Excuse me for a second. Number one, these are not text messages. These are written assignments, and hence the last of the critical elements in the rubric is writing and mechanics. If you're going to text it or send an email from your phone or do it from your tablet or something, that's fine. You still have to follow all the rules of punctuation and grammar. And so what I see quite frequently is capitalization is a real problem. Possessives will be a real problem. So that's just a word of caution to you. But make sure that you answer the critical elements that are in the discussion rubric. Comprehension, timeliness. The first post is due on Thursday by 11:59 p.m. If you're 2 days late, you lose all points for that. Okay, so there's no wiggle room in it, and that's just giving away points. Engagement is you need to reply to others, and I encourage you to make it on another day. I've done this a very long time, and I realize everybody's pressed for time, as you've heard me say. I finished all of my degrees at night, working for the sheriff's department, working in the county jail, wife and 2 kids. Yeah, you want to log in at 5 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, make your initial post, reply to 2 other people, and then not touch it again for another week. I understand that. It's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to adequately engage, reply to somebody, or somebody's going to reply to your post. The idea is to create a discussion. This is where your learning occurs. It's as if we were sitting in a classroom. So I will always try to ask you one more question, to ask you one more thing, because that's what I would do in the classroom. Okay? I hope that helps you a little bit. Keep the cards and letters coming. Let me know what I can do to help you.